My mother-in-law poisoned my food to prove my deadly allergy was fake. My last shred of patience died right there. I've been allergic to shellfish my whole life. The kind where my throat closes up and I need an EpiPen within minutes or I could die. When I met my husband James, I told him on our second date because restaurants were always tricky, and I needed him to understand why I had to ask so many questions about ingredients. He was great about it, always double-checking menus, carrying backup EpiPens, making sure restaurants knew about my allergy. His mother Linda was a different story. From the moment James told her about my allergy, she rolled her eyes and said young people nowadays all claimed allergies for attention. She said in her day nobody had allergies and everyone was fine. I showed her my medical alert bracelet, my prescription papers, even offered to have my allergist talk to her. She waved it all away, saying doctors would diagnose anything for money. The first few family dinners were tense. Linda would make elaborate seafood dishes, then act offended when I couldn't eat them. She'd say she forgot about my fake allergy and make something else while sighing dramatically. James would bring safe food for me, but Linda would call it insulting to bring outside food to her table. She started saying I was using allergies to control James, to make myself special, to get attention at every meal. She'd tell anyone who'd listen that I was ruining family dinners with my pickiness. Then she started testing me. She'd swear something was safe, then mention after I'd eaten it that there might have been shrimp paste in the sauce, but since I didn't react, I must be cured. I'd panic, take Benadryl, and watch for symptoms while she laughed about me being dramatic. James would get angry, but Linda would cry that she was just trying to help me get over my mental block about seafood. She started hiding seafood in things, tiny amounts at first. She'd grind up dried shrimp and put it in seasonings, use oyster sauce in vegetables, sneak fish sauce into marinades. Each time I'd feel my throat getting itchy, my lips tingling, and I'd have to take Benadryl immediately. Linda would say it was psychosomatic because if I really had an allergy, I'd be in the hospital. She didn't understand that the tiny amounts were just below my threshold for anaphylaxis, but still causing reactions. James caught her once adding something to my plate, and she said it was just extra seasoning. We stopped going to her house for dinner, but she'd bring food to our place, always insisting she made it specially for me. I stopped eating anything she made. She told the whole family I was refusing her food to be spiteful. At James's birthday dinner at a restaurant, Linda insisted on ordering for everyone, saying she knew the menu best. She ordered me a pasta dish, swearing it was safe. The waiter confirmed no shellfish. I was hungry and tired of fighting, so I ate it. Within minutes, my throat started closing. James stabbed me with the EpiPen while calling 911. At the hospital, the doctor said I'd ingested concentrated shellfish extract, enough to kill someone with my level of allergy if not for the immediate EpiPen. Linda arrived at the hospital playing the concerned mother-in-law, but the nurse was suspicious. She asked how shellfish extract ended up in a supposedly safe dish. Linda said the restaurant must have made a mistake, but the restaurant manager had come to the hospital with the security footage because they were terrified of being sued. The video showed Linda at the table alone for a few minutes while we were in the bathroom. She'd pulled a small bottle from her purse and poured it into my food. The manager had kept the plate for testing after we left in the ambulance. The police were called. Linda tried to say it was just fish sauce for flavor, that she didn't know it would hurt me. The officer asked why she brought fish sauce to a restaurant. She said she always carried seasonings. He asked to see her purse and they couldn't believe what they found. Officer Lorraine Boyd reached into Linda's purse right there in the hospital hallway. She pulled out 3 small bottles, the kind with medical labels and precise measurements. The officer held them up to the light and her whole face changed. She found concentrated shellfish extract, the pharmaceutical grade kind they use in allergy testing labs. Linda started backing up, but the officer kept digging through the purse. She pulled out a spiral notebook with a blue cover. Officer Boyd flipped through the pages and I watched her expression get harder with each one. The notebook had dates going back 2 years. Each entry described my reactions to food Linda had given me. One said tiny amount in sauce. Subject showed mild reaction, proving psychological component. Another said increased dose in marinade. Subject took antihistamine but no hospital visit, confirming mental block theory. There were at least 20 entries documenting how Linda had been poisoning me systematically to prove I was faking. The officer looked up at Linda with disgust. Linda's face crumpled and tears started rolling down her cheeks. She reached for the notebook, but Officer Boyd pulled it back. Linda said she was trying to help me overcome my mental block about seafood. She said exposure therapy works for phobias and she'd read about it online. Officer Boyd cut her off mid-sentence. The officer said this wasn't a phobia. It was a documented medical condition with years of records. She said what Linda did constituted attempted murder. Linda gasped like she'd been slapped. Officer Boyd pulled out handcuffs and told Linda to turn around. Linda started sobbing and saying this was all a misunderstanding. She said she never meant to hurt anyone. Officer Boyd didn't care. She snapped the cuffs on Linda's wrists while reading her rights. I watched from my hospital room doorway as they walked Linda down the hallway. Linda kept turning back to look at me, her face red and streaming with tears. She kept saying I was misunderstood over and over. Other patients and nurses stopped to stare. James stood next to me with his arm around my waist. I could feel him shaking. James came back into my room after they took Linda away. He pulled the chair right up next to my bed and sat down. He took my hand in both of his and just held it. His hands were cold and trembling. I could see his whole face had collapsed. His eyes were red and wet. He said he should have protected me better. He said he should have cut his mother off years ago when the testing started. His voice kept breaking. I was still shaky from the EpiPen and my throat felt raw. My whole body ached from the reaction, but I squeezed his hand and told him this wasn't his fault. I said his mother was an adult who made her own choices. He shook his head. He said he knew she was testing me and he didn't do enough to stop it. I reminded him we stopped going to her house. We stopped eating her food. He said it wasn't enough because she still found a way to hurt me. I didn't know what else to say, so I just held his hand while he cried. The nurse came in around midnight to check my vitals. She said the doctor wanted to keep me overnight for observation. She explained that I'd ingested a really concentrated dose. My blood pressure was still high and my breathing was still a little rough. The doctor came in an hour later with my chart. She sat on the edge of my bed and went through everything. She said the amount Linda used could have killed me within minutes. She said if James hadn't used the EpiPen immediately, I wouldn't have made it to the hospital. That made my stomach drop. She kept talking. She said my body had been exposed to repeated small doses over 2 years. She said that kind of exposure can make allergies worse instead of better. She said I'd probably have increased sensitivity to shellfish now. She said I might need to carry 2 EpiPens instead of 1. I wanted to scream. Linda had literally made my medical condition worse with her testing. The doctor prescribed me new EpiPens and stronger antihistamines. She said I needed to be extra careful from now on. I woke up the next morning to my sister Catalina bursting through the door. She'd driven 4 hours overnight to get to the hospital. She took one look at me in the bed with the IV still in my arm and started crying. Then she got angry. Her face turned red and she started pacing. She said she never trusted Linda from day one. She said Linda always gave her bad vibes. She asked why I didn't tell her how bad the testing had gotten. I felt embarrassed admitting it. I said I was trying to keep the peace for James's sake. Catalina stopped pacing and stared at me. She said that sounded really stupid now that I almost died. I knew she was right. I'd let Linda abuse me for 2 years because I didn't want to cause family problems. Catalina sat down in the chair James had been using. She said from now on I needed to tell her everything. She said she didn't care about keeping peace with people who tried to kill me. I promised I would. She stayed with me all day while James went home to shower and change clothes. 3 days later, I got a call from someone named Blake McCarthy. He said he was the district attorney handling Linda's case. He wanted to meet with James and me to discuss the charges. We drove to his office downtown. Blake was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a sharp suit and tired eyes. He had all the evidence spread out on his conference table. He showed us the notebook, the bottles, photos of the restaurant security footage. He said they were filing charges of attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon. He explained that the notebook showed clear planning over time. The pharmaceutical-grade shellfish extract showed intent to harm. He said the case was strong enough that he felt confident about getting a conviction. He asked if we had any questions. James asked how long Linda could go to prison. Blake said attempted murder could be 15 to 20 years depending on the judge. That should have felt good, but I just felt tired. I didn't want to think about Linda or trials or any of it. I just wanted to feel safe eating food again. A week after the incident, James's phone rang. It was his father, Kenji. James put it on speaker. Kenji asked if we could meet him at a coffee shop near our apartment. We agreed and drove over that afternoon. Kenji was already sitting at a corner table when we arrived. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 1 week. His face was gray and he had deep circles under his eyes. We sat down and he started talking immediately. He said he had no idea Linda was doing this to me. He said Linda always dismissed my allergy when he wasn't around. But when he was there, she acted concerned and supportive. He said she'd been lying to him for years. His hands were shaking as he stirred his coffee. Then he said he was filing for divorce. He said he couldn't stay married to someone who tried to kill his daughter-in-law. He said he wanted to testify against her in court. James's whole face crumpled when his dad said that. I could see it was breaking his heart even though he said he understood. Kenji reached across the table and squeezed James's hand. He said he was sorry he didn't see what Linda was doing sooner. 2 days after meeting with Kenji, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it and immediately wished I hadn't. Linda's sister was screaming at me before I could even say hello. She said I was tearing the family apart. She said Linda would never actually hurt anyone. She said I must have done something to provoke this whole situation. She called me dramatic for making such a big deal about a little seafood. I tried to explain about the concentrated extract in the notebook. She talked right over me. She said families forgive each other and I was being vindictive by pressing charges. She said Linda was a good woman who made one mistake. I hung up on her. My hands were shaking. James asked who it was and I told him. He got angry and said he'd block her number. But the call had already shaken me. I realized there were people in Linda's family who would always take her side. It didn't matter how much evidence existed. They'd decided I was the villain and nothing would change their minds. Blake called us back to his office 3 weeks after the first meeting. He had new documents spread across the table. He showed us the forensic analysis of the shellfish extract from Linda's purse. The report was full of technical language, but Blake translated. He said it was medical-grade concentrated allergen, the kind that costs hundreds of dollars per bottle, the kind you have to order from specialty medical suppliers. You can't just buy it at a store. Linda had to actively search for it online. She had to pay for expedited shipping. She had to sign forms confirming she understood what it was. Blake said this proved the poisoning wasn't some quick decision. It was a planned attack. Linda had spent time and money to get something that could kill me. She'd researched where to buy it. She'd waited for the right opportunity to use it. The forensic report made everything feel more real and more horrible. This wasn't a confused old woman making a mistake. This was someone who planned to hurt me. I tried to go back to normal life after leaving the hospital, but everything felt wrong. I'd make myself lunch and then stare at it for 20 minutes. My heart would start racing. My hands would shake. I couldn't make myself take a bite of anything I hadn't personally prepared from scratch. Even then, I'd panic. James would order takeout and I'd refuse to eat it. I lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks. James called my doctor and explained what was happening. She recommended a therapist named Summer Castillo who specialized in trauma. I met Summer at her office the following week. She had a calm voice and didn't make me feel crazy. She said what I was experiencing was a normal trauma response to being poisoned. She said my brain was trying to protect me by making me afraid of food. She taught me breathing exercises for when the panic started. She explained that my hypervigilance made sense given what happened, but she said we needed to work on not letting it control my whole life. She gave me homework assignments like eating one meal prepared by James each week. She said we'd work up slowly to eating in restaurants again. It helped to know I wasn't losing my mind. It helped to know other people had survived this kind of thing. James spent 3 days calling every family member he could think of. His cousin picked up on the first ring. She remembered that dinner 2 years ago like it was yesterday. Linda had made this special sauce she swore was safe for people with tomato sensitivity. The cousin ate it because Linda kept insisting it was fine. Within an hour, she was covered in hives and her face had swollen up. Linda acted shocked and said the restaurant must have mislabeled the tomato paste she bought. But the cousin found the empty can in the trash later. It had tomatoes listed right there on the front. She thought maybe Linda made an honest mistake reading the label. Now she realized Linda knew exactly what she was doing. James called his uncle next. The uncle told him about his girlfriend who had a severe dairy allergy. Linda made her a special dessert at Thanksgiving. The girlfriend ended up in the emergency room with her throat closing. Linda cried and said she forgot about the cream cheese. But James's uncle found the empty cream cheese container hidden at the bottom of the trash under other garbage. Like Linda was trying to hide it. James made a list of 7 different people over 5 years. Every single one had an allergy or food sensitivity that Linda decided was fake. Every single one ended up sick after eating something Linda prepared. Some just got mild reactions. Others ended up in the hospital. I was just the one who finally had enough proof to nail her. The preliminary hearing happened 6 weeks after I got poisoned. The courthouse smelled like floor cleaner and old paper. I had to sit in the witness chair and tell the whole story again. Linda sat at the defense table in a nice blue dress looking like somebody's sweet grandma. Her lawyer stood up when it was his turn. He smiled at me like we were old friends. He asked if I had a history of being dramatic about my allergy. I said no. He asked if I'd ever exaggerated symptoms for attention. Blake stood up fast and objected. The judge agreed and told the lawyer to move on. The lawyer asked if I had any reason to be vindictive toward Linda. I said she'd been trying to poison me for 2 years. He said that sounded extreme. I said she literally poisoned me with concentrated shellfish extract. Blake presented my medical records going back to when I was 6 years old. 3 different times I'd ended up hospitalized from accidental shellfish exposure. Once from cross-contamination at a restaurant. Once from a friend's mom who didn't believe me about the allergy. Once from food at a school event. The records showed my throat closing, my blood pressure dropping, the EpiPen injections, the hospital stays. Everything matched what happened at James's birthday dinner. The defense lawyer stood up again after Blake sat down. He said Linda was a confused older woman who didn't understand how serious my condition was. He said she thought she was helping me overcome a mental block about seafood. He said she never intended to cause real harm. Blake waited until he was done talking. Then Blake asked the judge if he could play a video. The bailiff set up a laptop on a table where everyone could see. Blake played the security footage from the restaurant. The video showed our whole table, me and James getting up to go to the bathroom together. Linda sitting alone at the table for maybe 3 minutes. She looked around twice to make sure nobody was watching. Then she pulled a small bottle from her purse. She unscrewed the cap. She poured liquid from the bottle into my pasta. She stirred it with my fork. She put the bottle back in her purse. She looked around again. Then she sat back and waited for us to return. The judge watched the whole thing without saying anything. When the video ended, he looked at Linda for a long time. Then he said the video showed clear premeditation. He said Linda knew exactly what she was doing and took steps to hide it. He said anyone who would do this represented a danger to other people. He ordered Linda held without bail until trial. Linda started crying and saying it wasn't fair. Her lawyer tried to argue, but the judge was done listening. The bailiff took Linda away through a side door. James and I started couples therapy 2 weeks after the hearing. We sat in Summer's office on a gray couch that was supposed to be comfortable but wasn't. James kept saying he should have protected me better. He kept saying he should have cut his mother off years ago. I wanted to comfort him. But I was also angry. I was the one who almost died. I was the one who couldn't eat without panicking. But somehow I was spending half our sessions making James feel better about his guilt. Summer stopped us after the 3rd session went that way. She said we were both victims of Linda's abuse, but in different ways. She said James's guilt was real and valid, but she also said it couldn't become my job to manage his feelings when I was trying to survive my own trauma. She taught us how to support each other without drowning together. James learned to process his guilt in individual therapy instead of dumping it on me. I learned to tell him when I needed support instead of trying to be strong all the time. It helped. Slowly. Blake called us to his office 3 weeks after the hearing. He had a thick folder on his desk. He said the forensic psychologist finished evaluating Linda. The report was 40 pages long, but Blake gave us the summary. Linda had narcissistic personality disorder. She genuinely believed she was helping people overcome fake limitations. The psychologist said Linda couldn't understand that other people's medical conditions were real. She'd never experienced severe allergies herself. In her mind, that meant nobody else could have them either. Her need to be right about everything overrode any empathy or concern for other people's safety. The psychologist said Linda would never accept responsibility for what she did. She would always believe she was the victim. She would always think everyone else was wrong and she was trying to help. Blake said this made her dangerous. Even if she went to prison and got treatment, she'd probably never change. More family members stopped talking to Linda after they heard about the other victims. James's dad filed for divorce. 2 of James's cousins sent messages saying they believed us and supported us. But James's aunt sent me a letter in the mail. The envelope had my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside was 3 pages of cramped writing. The aunt said I should drop the charges. She said prison would kill Linda. She said Linda was family, and family forgives each other. She said I was being cruel by pursuing this. She said Linda made a mistake, but didn't deserve to have her life ruined. She said I was tearing the whole family apart. I read the letter twice. My hands shook the whole time. I showed it to Blake at our next meeting. He read it carefully. Then he said it was witness tampering. He made a copy for the evidence file. He said the aunt probably didn't realize she was breaking the law, but she was. Blake called us back to his office 2 weeks later. He said the prosecutor's office was offering a plea deal. Linda would plead guilty to aggravated assault instead of attempted murder. She'd serve 5 to 8 years with mandatory psychiatric treatment. Blake said the deal would save us from going through a trial. It would be over faster. We'd know exactly what sentence Linda got instead of risking what a jury might decide. But Blake also said we had the right to reject the deal and go to trial. If we won at trial, Linda might get 15 to 20 years. If we lost, she might get nothing. James and I went home and talked about it for hours. I was exhausted. I wanted it over. I wanted to stop thinking about Linda every single day. But I also wanted her to face the full consequences. She tried to murder me. That's what the charges should say. Not assault. Murder. We met with Blake again 3 days later and told him we wanted to reject the plea deal. The victim impact session happened at a community center downtown. Blake said other people Linda had hurt wanted to meet me. I walked into a conference room with James. 2 women were already sitting at the table. The first woman was maybe 40 with dark hair. She introduced herself and said she had a severe peanut allergy. Linda had put peanut butter in a sauce at a family dinner 3 years ago. The woman ended up in the hospital with anaphylaxis. Linda told everyone it was an accident. The second woman was younger, maybe 30. She had celiac disease. Linda made a special gluten-free dish for her at Christmas dinner 2 years ago. The woman got violently sick for 3 days afterward. She found out later the dish had regular flour in it. Linda said the package must have been mislabeled. Both women said they'd thought they were alone. They'd thought it was just bad luck or an honest mistake. Now they knew Linda had targeted them on purpose. We talked for 2 hours. We shared our stories. We cried together. I realized Linda wasn't just someone who made bad choices. She was a serial abuser who genuinely enjoyed proving people wrong even when it hurt them. She got satisfaction from making people sick, and then acting like they were overreacting. The other women agreed to testify at trial. Blake said having multiple victims would make the case much stronger. He said it showed a pattern of behavior. He said juries would see Linda wasn't confused or mistaken. She knew exactly what she was doing and had done it over and over again. James and I told Blake we were absolutely sure about going to trial. We wanted Linda to face attempted murder charges. That's what she did to me. The other victims felt the same way about their cases. Blake warned us the trial would be hard and long, but he said he felt confident about getting a conviction now. The trial started on a Monday morning in October. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. The jury sat in 2 rows along one wall. Linda sat at the defense table in a different nice dress. She looked at me once when I walked in. Her face showed nothing. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Blake called witness after witness. My doctor testified about my medical history. The restaurant manager testified about the security footage. The forensic specialist testified about the pharmaceutical-grade shellfish extract. Each of the other victims testified about what Linda did to them. I testified for 6 hours over 2 days. The defense lawyer tried everything. He said Linda was a confused grandmother who didn't understand. He said she was mentally ill and couldn't help her behavior. He said she never meant real harm. But Blake had the notebook with Linda's detailed notes about testing me. He had the expensive shellfish extract she'd ordered online. He had the security footage showing her looking around before poisoning my food. He had the pattern of behavior with multiple victims over 5 years. He had my medical records proving my allergy was real and severe. The jury went to deliberate on a Thursday afternoon. James and I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom. We didn't talk much. We just waited. 6 hours later, the bailiff came out and said the jury had reached a verdict. We went back inside. The jury foreman stood up. The judge asked if they'd reached a verdict. The foreman said yes. The judge asked what they'd decided. The foreman said guilty of attempted murder. The judge's face stayed hard while he read the sentence. 15 years with parole possible after 10. Mandatory psychiatric treatment for the whole time. He looked straight at Linda and said her complete lack of remorse made her dangerous to others. He said she still insisted she was helping people, which proved she didn't understand what she'd done wrong. Linda jumped up from her chair and screamed across the courtroom that this was my fault. She said I destroyed the family and ruined everyone's lives. The bailiff grabbed her arm, but she kept yelling while they pulled her toward the door. I sat there watching her face twist with anger, and something inside me finally let go. I'd been carrying guilt about pressing charges, about putting James through this, about breaking up his family. But hearing her blame me one more time showed she still didn't get it. She still thought she was the victim. James squeezed my hand and we walked out of the courthouse together. We spent 3 weeks looking at apartments across town. James wanted distance from his mother's side of the family, and I needed a fresh start somewhere that didn't remind me of hospital rooms and court dates. We found a place with big windows and a kitchen where I could see everything I cooked. James got a new job at a company 30 minutes away from his old office. Kenji helped us move and stayed for dinner that first night. He checked every ingredient without me asking, reading labels twice and calling the manufacturer about the pasta sauce. The family split down the middle after the sentencing. Some relatives understood what Linda did and kept in touch. Others thought we were cruel for not accepting the plea deal. James's aunt stopped speaking to us completely. We learned to be okay with the division. I found a support group that met Tuesday nights at a community center downtown. 8 people sat in a circle talking about family members who hurt them. One woman's father was in prison for assault. Another man's brother had stolen everything he owned. They understood the weird grief of losing someone who was still alive. They got why I felt sad about Linda being in prison, even though I knew she needed to be there. Summer kept working with me on the food anxiety. I started calling restaurants ahead of time and talking directly to the chef. I explained my allergy and asked specific questions about ingredients and preparation. Most chefs were great about it. I ate out 3 times in 1 month without panicking. James and I learned to talk about hard things instead of avoiding conflict. We fought sometimes, but we worked through it instead of pretending everything was fine. 1 year after the poisoning, I woke up and realized I felt good. Really good. I'd started a blog about navigating severe allergies and dealing with people who dismissed them. Hundreds of people commented saying they had similar experiences. They thanked me for helping them advocate for themselves. James and I talked about starting a family over breakfast one Saturday morning. I felt confident I could teach kids to set boundaries and protect themselves. Linda was in prison and would be for years. That made James sad sometimes, and I understood. But we both knew it was the only way to keep people safe from her. I carried 2 EpiPens now in a special case. I probably always would. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was just careful, which is exactly what I should be.